We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people where we live, learn, and play. Adoption of the agenda. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorpe. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to minutes of March 6, 2018 open board meeting. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Dorland. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to recognition and delegations. I see the A may be a bit late, so moving to B, who stepped out. Perhaps, yes. Let's retrieve one of them.
I thought there was someone else before me.
Well, there was to be, but it appears she is either late or unable to come.
This is our main presenter, actually, right here.
Hi.
He's the reason we're all here, right?
Yeah. So welcome, Mateus and daughter. You have been given 10 minutes as a delegation to present, and then our trustees may be asking you questions or comments. So it's all yours.
When we are ready, we're going to get signal here. Oh, I might need to just go over.
There it is. It's up there now.
Excellent. All right.
No.
Okay. Levi, can you grab a seat? Can you have a seat, buddy? Thanks. Thank you very much for having me here, trustees. My name is Mateus Clement. I am a local politician for Cobble Hill, as well as a farmer and father of two. This is Levi, and Amalia is outside. They have had the good fortune of being raised on a farm, as well as part of an educational program. My wife, Zoe Clement, runs a program called Zoma Creative, which is an alternative program for students who aren't quite fitting the mold elsewhere. A lot of kinesthetic learners, a lot of artistic learners. And we've been doing that for 3 years. And one thing that we've come to realize is that incorporating the farm into the curriculum has been an incredibly powerful tool to cross-relate the learning in students' brains, who otherwise wouldn't have happened. When we think of farming, this is what we're thinking of. Quite often, the larger farmers. The reality is that the growth in agriculture is happening on the small scale, 1/4 acre to 3 acres. Small scale, better margins, you can do a lot of work yourself. We go through that ourselves. We were on 3 acres up until recently when we moved into Cobble Hill Village, and now we're on a 1/4 acre. So, like I said, we have the good fortune of being raised on a farm and getting those good microbes. Levi has been very involved, so has Amalia. I've been teaching a variety of programming with my wife. I do more of the mechanics, carpentry, and hands-on components. And she's really the one that comes up with more of the curriculum. I'm the just hands-on component. So, as you can see here, I'm very involved on the farm. We've had goats. This is my wife getting one of our garden beds ready. And this is our mascot for Zoma Creative. This is Marsha. She is a lion head bunny. So we go out in nature quite a bit to do our programming. And it's bringing this expertise to the table that what we're trying to ask for, which is we would like to start a preliminary inquiry into a potential September 2019 agricultural program with the school district. That's the ask. What that can look like, oh buddy, come here. It can look so many different ways, and that's the part I want to emphasize. There's a program in Delta, for example, that has been wildly successful in the 2 years it's been happening. They found it to be a priority. They took an old school that was abandoned, and now they have 2 part-time teachers, part-time doing the program, part-time teaching their classes, and they are down in their 2nd year with 26 students. All of those students are performing substantially higher than their peers in written and standardized testing, as well as people coming out of their shells. I've watched students come to our program who have so much anxiety that they can barely talk. And 6 months later, you won't recognize that student anymore because they've become an expert in something. They've been able to be hands-on and try something new that they've never had before. And so that's why I want to ask for preliminary inquiry into it, because there's so many different ways we could do it. We could do it as a program with the school district. It could be inside the school district. I could be an employee of the school district. Funding, of course, is a big issue, right? How are we going to fund that? I have previous relationships as the student president of Camosun with Rob Fleming and Lana Popham, who I plan to meet with to talk about this kind of initiative. It doesn't have to be big and it doesn't have to be grandiose. So I want to be really quick though. I have a bit of a hesitation calling it an agricultural program because there's so many facets. For us, math, when we want to learn about area, perimeter, volume, Pythagoras' theory, here we are measuring our concrete slab that we poured, figuring out how we are going to build our nursery, figuring out the volume and the cost of the soil that we're going to purchase. We're doing a lot of math in there. There's the final nursery that we had. We covered it in poly, and we started growing our own vegetable starts and selling them on the roadside stand. Again, more math and business entrepreneurship. A lot of science, learning about erosion and different soil, water retentions in soil. We learned about how to create a solar hot water collector using upcycled parts. And we were able to heat that nursery for free without creating any greenhouse gases. Students did all this themselves with the right tools and facilitation, and we were able to heat the greenhouse. Here we're learning about our plant starts and the ideal germination rates. We also do carpentry. We were making benches for our programs. Of course, things around the farm tend to break. We have to learn how to fix them. And then of course, we make food. We need to eat. So we do a lot of cooking and we learn a lot about our food and how to preserve food and how to cook it. All these photos you see here are from our farm, by the way. We learned how to make bread. We learned how to make a lot of potatoes. We did a bumper crop of potatoes. Normally you're buying a 5-pound bag for $3 in the store. We were selling ours for $3 a pound at the farmer's market. So our students are very active and very engaged with their food. They also get to learn a lot about animals. They actually raise their chicks from start, and they got to name them and get to be part of them. A lot of these items are actually quite low cost without having high risk or high overhead. So here are the students with all of their own baby chicks that they got to name. And this baby goat is 2 days old, and they got to see and experience that on the farm. Here we are learning how to make our own push tractor so that we could be harvesting and cultivating without having to bend over repeatedly. And we actually made something that looked like a go-kart where we were able to pick lettuce incredibly quickly. Students again built them all themselves. With facilitation, they were able to use power tools, and also we did have a bit of grass that needed cutting and we needed to fix the ride-on lawnmower. This is the soil we started with. This is what I want to emphasize. What are we bringing to the table? My wife, she's an educator, certified teacher. We're bringing that curriculum, but we're also bringing the expertise of small-scale farming, being practical with our costs and how we can make it a business. I think that's a really important part. I'm sure Elizabeth can relate. When we think about, we should be giving the same level of, I don't want to say respect, but attention to farmers that we do to the trades. I think that there's a huge possibility here in the Valley with how much fallow land we have to become the breadbasket of Vancouver Island. That's no exaggeration. One farmer on 1 acre can feed 50 people year round with their vegetable production. That's a business. And it's something that is needed, not a commodity that's, oh, maybe I'll pass on that. And to be competitive as well. I sodded my front lawn. 3 weeks later, growing food. This is what a 1/4 acre of vegetable production can look like from the tree back. We had 6 raised beds. We had the chickens on the right, and then we had our greenhouse on the left. Grew food year round. A few other shots. All of this was a couple $100 worth of material. That's all it is. That's another thing that we're bringing to the table. It's a lot of resources. I just salvaged probably close to $1,000 worth of lumber from construction sites for free so that we can build raised beds. This program can start as a centralized spot somewhere else, and then we can assist other schools in creating food programs and programs at their school. How much more time do I have left? 2 minutes? We incorporate organic principles. You can see the flowers on the left. We grow a lot of flowers to bring beneficials and to attract the pests that we have. It's okay, just come 4 minutes. This is the 500 square foot renovated garage that we ran this program up until just 2 months ago, until we moved into our old place. When I say it doesn't take much, the materials component is so small. Really, I think the largest part that I spoke with Rod Allen about was the funding for the teachers and how do we make that happen. Like I said, in Delta, they found it a priority, they found the funding to make it happen. 500 square feet, a lot of salvage materials from Restore, and we created a classroom. So when we come to the end here, I had a look at your mission statements, and I think without going through them, this is something that you produced. I think this program has the potential to tie into a lot of these things. We could be talking to VIU about dual credits. We could be working with the post-secondary or middle school to be able to make this happen. We can use it as either an individual program or a resource for other teachers to be able to tie into around social studies, science, math. There could be field trips. The original proposal I brought forward to Rod Allen was that we would be using Nicole Milbay now. By the way, I just want to say congratulations on opening a school. I was so happy to see that. It's no small feat, and I'm very, very happy and proud. But with that school being taken up, I understand that where the need is. I'm not too sure what this can look like. Again, and exploring what the cost would be and what the options might be or where we need to go. I'm not going to come with a perfect idea to you today. I think that I need the help of teachers and staff to help form and flush out some of those ideas, especially since I'm not a formal educator. And sometimes, let not perfect be the enemy of good. This was the first greenhouse we built. And well, I'm not the best carpenter, and also it's not too often that we get snow. So sometimes we will hit road bumps in this process, but I love the P word, especially being local government. We can pilot something. And I think that if we can bring, Zoma Creative, as well as Zoma Farm, can bring forward the materials and expertise, we can work with teachers to create a cross-curricular program that people may not become farmers, but they might become a mechanic, they might become a carpenter, they may become all these other things, they may become a nutritionist because they became so interested in veterinarian. So to call it an ag program, I'm still a little reluctant. Calling it the super awesome program is perhaps a little cheeky, but it can lead to so many things. And so that's what I would like to leave off with and see if there are any questions about the house and whatnot.
Thank you.
Am I on time? I think I'm going a minute over.
Comments or questions from trustees? Trustee Hutchins?
Thank you, Mateus. Very interesting. How many hours a week would a student be at the farm?
The only example I have that's not in the States, because the States have...
Oh, your farm.
On my farm?
Yeah.
We incorporate every single day. It is every single day we are out there, whether it be their breaks, whether they're collecting, building. Sometimes there are days where the students, we're very loose on our curriculum in the sense that if the students really have a passion to do something else, for example, that nursery was one, where they had the option it was going to be the next week, but it was nice, so we just went out and did materials. So we incorporate every single day, even when the weather's poor. We show a lot of sunny pictures, but we also had a forest at the old property, so we were able to go into the forest and we had a shelter there.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for coming and presenting such an intriguing idea and a successful project that you have. And certainly, I think we probably would like you to continue talking with our superintendent. That would be the next step for us, I believe.
Okay, and what I'll be doing, just as a closing, I'll be speaking with the principals at Couch High, Lake Couch and Chemainus, is the other one, the high schools. That's where my focus is. I love high school students, as well as meeting with the ministers to talk about the potential of this because I'm really passionate. So we'll see how we can interconnect. And I would also like to give a big thanks to Rod and Jason for the help that they've provided so far.
Great. Well, thank you, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, moving back to the agenda.
Oh, good timing.
We're on item 5, report of closed meetings. Mr. Sandquist.
Thank you. Prior to this open board session, the board met in closed and discussed Millbay Elementary staffing, personnel, and the upcoming election.
Thank you. Moving to old business. First A, the action list on page 10. And it looks like we're done. So this is a good news story for us. We have worked through the action list, but we may create more. Okay, moving to item B, no idling signage, and there is a briefing note on page 11. Mr. Sandquist, could you take us through that, please?
Very brief report. We were asked to bring back a report on the cost or feasibility of having anti-idling signs at our locations, and it's attached here. Approximately 50 signs with installation would be around $3,250.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt?
Whose job would it be to enforce? Like
No
with the
idling
principals?
policy? Perhaps I could refer that to Mr. Superintendent. Would we have an enforcement?
It would not be our intention to attempt to enforce this.
Thank you. Trustee Hutchins?
But this type of thing lends to a lot of peer enforcement. Turn your car off. That type of thing.
Thank you for that demonstration.
I was going to say stupid, but
Glad to see we're controlling ourselves today, Trustee. Regroup.
No, I was just.
Okay. Trustee Croft.
I'd just like to offer that having seen this at other schools in the Lower Mainland, I didn't see any enforcement from teachers and principals, that it was sort of a self-regulating kind of a thing. So at that point, it wasn't causing any extra work for staff and principals.
Okay, thank you. And we have already adopted motions to go forward on the signage. Is that correct, Mr. Sandquist? From your briefing note?
It was to bring back information for consideration.
so a little bit you can see.
But it does say that the following motions were adopted and
Subject to staff
oh,
review.
subject to staff review. Okay, so Trustee Croft.
I'd like to move that we actually proceed with the original motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee Hutchins. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the great pleasure today to introduce the new principal of Cowichan Secondary School, Nicole Miller, sitting quietly on the side. Nicole comes to us all the way from Toronto. Has been here a grand total of 5 days already. And is already making her mark on Cow High, putting a parent newsletter on Fridays, which was quite informative. And just like to welcome her here and thank her for bringing all her expertise from inner city Toronto to our little rural school district. Lots we can learn from each other. So I look forward to working with Nicole.
Thank you, and on behalf of the board, a sincere welcome. We appreciate you stopping the school year in your previous location and coming to help us out when we needed it. So we're really appreciative of you doing that and appreciative that you bring your skills and knowledge to our district. We hope that you have a wonderful time here. And I think anyone would be welcome or would be able to assist you if you needed any information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to show our appreciation, you're not required to stay. You're welcome to, but
I am staying with my mom on Salt Spring, so I'm gonna go get my ferry, but it's nice to meet everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Okay, back to superintendent.
thank you, Madam Chair. It's not that long since we last met with the spring break and Easter in between. Just to bring you a little bit of an update on Passion Week pilot project that we're trying throughout the district. I've mentioned this before. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opportunities for students in grade 12 this year to spend 5 days pursuing an opportunity that they're passionate about with teachers who are passionate about offering something that's a little bit different. Those opportunities at the moment are yoga, being truly present, introductory rock climbing, and that's for students who aren't in the generally making use of the academy or having those experiences, so mainly for kids from other schools. Outdoor adventures on water and land, a golf opportunity with a certified golf coach, outdoor stewardship and recreation, which includes a significant portion of canoeing and an exploration of Métis identity, history, and culture, in conjunction with the Métis Society. So we're doing a sort of this stripped down version this year, where we will, in the process right now of putting these opportunities out to students to see if there's things there that they are interested in. Students who are interested will make that known, and then can spend 5 days with that teacher in sort of a course. That's a 1-credit course offering, and they would be happening at different times depending on the needs of the specific program. Some are weather dependent and so on, would be happening a bit later, but we're asking students to select. We're trying this as a pilot. Students from any school can select the program, and so this is an attempt to see how easily we can move kids around the district for these opportunities. If this works as anticipated, we would have significantly more of these opportunities next year, once we sort of are working the bugs out. But again, it's an opportunity to connect kids and their passions with teachers and their passions, and putting them together in 1-credit modules that the students will be able to, let's say, receive credit for. Okay, it's kind of a cool opportunity. Big thanks to Nicole and Larry Matten for helping to, and Denise, to really sort of get this ball rolling. The other thing I will mention is the Mateus commented on is Mill Bay Elementary. The board is, as you know, because you did it, you reopened Mill Bay Elementary School. That information went out on social media, on our website, and on Facebook just before spring break, and huge feedback, positive, excited people, anxious to see how that program develops. So we don't anticipate having a large problem filling the program. We will likely start with the kindergarten to grade 3 offering with up to 4 divisions. That's a bit dependent on facilities, work over the summer, but we're pretty safe in starting with that, and then opening other opportunities next year as more of the facility comes online. It will be a nature-based program. We're currently in the position of investigating other nature-based programs around the island to see how they operate, and doing sort of some field trips to those, as well as our first task is hiring a principal, and that posting should, we hope, go out tomorrow. Now, Madam Chair, is my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Moving to item 8, Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. We're just going to transfer the screen over. Find that I can make the information a little bit larger if I run it off my Surface here versus the software. We showed the funding announcement at EEBC, but if you weren't standing right in front of the screen, you likely weren't able to make it out. So we're going to try again. Bring it here to the board table, very similar to what we saw last time. So we're just waiting for it to load. Sorry, it takes a little bit for it to find it, but we did test it beforehand. It'll work.
Trust us.
Patience.
It is unusual.
It's looking good.
Popcorn forever.
It's blinking over here, so it's following the signal. Just a second here. Sorry, it'll be worth the wait.
Hey!
Okay, we have it on one screen anyway here. Let's get this simple.
Okay.
It'll pop up here in a second. Well,
Sometimes it hurts if we do this.
yeah, thank you, Gina.
Boy, that technology's getting the best of us.
We do have it on one screen, so we could.
No,
we
lost it. It'll be back.
It's more fun when it
can do this, do interpretive dance, if these screens don't work.
Well, I explained it without you actually being able to see it last week, so I could do that again, but I think we'll have it here in a second.
Do we have it all on paper here?
Oh, you do, actually, sorry. I should have handed these out.
There we go.
I was prepared.
Hey.
Hey, there you go. You just
Okay, here we go, but there are copies
Paper.
for everybody,
There
so
we
I'll
go.
just pass these
one.
down and around and
Pass it down.
just take the top two sheets. So what I have here, which is our actual funding announcement compared to last year, so you can walk through the changes. And then I'll go into the starting budget position and end up with financial projection, which is the next item on the agenda. So we put them all into the same work group here. So I showed you at the Board Education Business Committee how the rates had changed. So the basic allocation for a regular student has gone up from $7,301 to $7,423. That's a change of $122. And I showed you how special needs, level 1, 2, and 3 have also seen adjustments in their rates. So on the screen here, where we see the enrollment-based funding, and you see a change of $1,395,000, part of that is due to an increased enrollment projection of about 60 FTE, so projecting 60 more students than we had this year overall. The other part of that $1.395 million is related to the $122 per student, so the funding rate increased. Now that funding rate went up to cover the board's increased costs for labor settlements that have been realized, to bring in the return of the administrative savings into the grant, to pick up the economic stability dividend that was announced in May for staff increases as well. Under special needs, we see level 1, 2, and 3 listed there. So you see some increased funding, particularly big variances in the level 1, where we had 6 students this year, and next year there's 11. So that's a significant change of 5. You know, and materially, it's almost twice as many level 1 designated students. Level 2 slightly down by 5, and level 3, which is the behavior category, up by about 11 projected. So those generate funding partially again because the rate changed, and partially because the numbers have changed. We see some additional students coming in through English language learning, Aboriginal education, and adult education. So Aboriginal education, we're actually projecting down just a little bit. So overall, that's $400,000 there that's come into the grant. Salary differential is the difference between the average teacher salary in the province, the lowest teacher salary in the province and our salary. So to keep districts on an equal playing field, we get a supplement there, so our teachers are more expensive than the lowest price in the province. Unique geographic factors, that's the small community supplement. So I was wondering at the last Board Education and Business Committee what had changed, or why did that go up by $169,000? The small community supplement has been increased by almost 2%. So that is funding that we receive for operating the small secondary school out in Lake Cowichan, and some of our elementary schools, which are 5 kilometers or further from the next neighboring school, also receive a supplement. It might seem unusual to think that Crofton or Maple Bay receive a supplement, but they are far enough away from the next school that they're supported through additional funding, as is Paulson. A little bit of funding under the education plan. So total September enrollment, we see the change from last September to what we're projecting for next year of just under $2 million, $1,981,000. And then we come down to our other factors here. February enrollment is pretty static. That's just really some changes in rates, same as our May count. And then the return of the administrative savings, so that negative that was taken away last year and then given back has just been netted off of itself. So overall, our grant is $2,337,870 more, projected to be more than it is this year at this time. So you weren't able to really see that slide last time, so we thought we'd bring it back to explain the grant. So next slide up here are, again, trying to make this big, are the changes. So with that funding coming in, that's going to be an increase in revenue, but our other provincial grants have dropped by almost $500,000 because that was partly that return of the admin savings, as well as a grant that the board received for the harmonization of the steelworker and QP benefit plans. That was some money that had come in this year that we weren't expecting. Tuition is a cohort of the education assistant program where some of the students that attended actually weren't our students, so they paid for the cohort. That may happen again next year. It sounds like it will, but we haven't built it into the budget yet. There's some small changes, and last year's budget was balanced using just under $1.4 million in surplus, $1,362,000. So all those net changes show that our revenues right now would be up by $359,000. But then we have some cost pressures. So if it's a negative, it's a pressure. Teacher wage increments, lots of new hires. They move up the band for 10 years until they reach their maximum salary. And we need to be budgeting for that. In our budget program, we actually go through each individual employee and work that increment in at what time of the year that it actually happens. So we're very, very precise. That figure is usually in the $300,000 range, a little bit higher because we have so many new staff. A lot of our staff have typically reached their maximum, but with all the new hires, lots of people moving up. Teacher and support staff wage increases, just $569,000 there. So that's the salary increases of 0.5% on July 1st for our teachers and support staff, 1% on May 1st. But the 1% in May 1st is only for 2 months, so it doesn't actually really kick in until the next year. Employee benefits, net of 50% MSP premium reduction, so the board knows that the premium was reduced, and but we also saw some increase in our teacher benefit rate of about $250,000, so the net is there. We actually saved a little bit of money, but then it got taken away with the 1.95% payroll tax, which is new starting on January the 1st. Do you have a question?
Trustee Schmidt?
Is that a done deal? Like, I mean, government taxing government, it's just a question. Is this a done deal? Or is this possibly the 638,000 might not exist? Like, is it?
It's been announced at this time. I know that it's something that I think the BC School Trustees Association are actively working with government or on. It's an issue that the Secretary Treasurer's Association are also actively working with government on. But at this point, we know it to be in place and it applies to us currently. Could it change? That's up to government to tell us.
Okay.
Trustee DeGroot?
The minister actually said that they wanted to work with school boards and try to figure out how to manage this because they realized it came out of the blue, so to speak, taxing our dollar, the money that we get from them.
So if we were to go back, before we had any MSP premium reductions, so go back a year, and look at what the costs for the MSP premiums were, they were around $1.1 million for the school district. With the reduction and this money added back in, it's about 1.25, so it's about $150,000 greater under the new structure. It's the fact that in this particular year, we saw it dip to 50% and realized those savings and applied them elsewhere, that it appears to be a pressure. Because now we're going a little bit back up above what we had before. So I think in government's view, you had a year of savings, you should have saved it, and you could have applied it towards the premium. But nobody knew that it was coming. And we all thought, great, we finally have a break on one of our budget items, hooray, 50% MSP premium reduction, and then we got the new tax. But overall, the board's not in that much of a different position than you were 2 years ago with the full premium. We built in the election. That may be underestimating the cost of the election. Now, as we're starting some of the conversations with the partners that we share with, so the costs around the polling stations are quite a bit higher than they were in previous years. Our share may be a little bit higher. Now, it's incremental when it's with the municipality. They can just really pass on the additional costs related to our participation, but we have a lot of municipalities to partner with here, so over 4 other local governments, it gets to be quite a bit. Kind of offset by taking out the demographics and policy consultant, and then we had some miscellaneous adjustments, so we saw some pressures built into our budget of $1.4 million, which leaves us with a starting position, which we showed you at BEBC of just over $1 million of a shortfall, and that doesn't bring in any surplus projections. So that's the next part I'm going to talk to you about if you don't have any questions on this part. Okay, so again, I'm trying to make this big enough that everybody can see it. On the revenue side, what we haven't built in here yet are our February and May counts. So February's count has happened, but hasn't yet been announced. We haven't received the funding for February, so we haven't yet built it into the projection. Some of the enrollment numbers did look pretty good. And May, of course, hasn't happened. So we're really operating on the grant announcement that we had last December. So that's why you see the provincial grant being in a balanced position. International program, tuition program, getting really, really close. We were a little bit behind the last time we showed you this projection, which was based on January. This projection is based on March 30th. Now coming in pretty close. Local education agreement is a wash. That just comes out of the provincial grant. Miscellaneous revenue, a lot of that relates to the international program and some of the fees that they charge coming in a little bit better. Example, they have a registration fee for new students, there's a homestay fee, and we've done quite well on those. So overall, we're showing that we think our revenues on $80 million will be $230,000 higher. That's pretty close. Right now, that's really, really close. Moving into salaries. The last time I showed you this projection, I was holding money back for principal and exempt staff wage increases that the board had budgeted. Now we're getting closer to the end of the year, and it seems unlikely that would be retroactive back to July. So what I've left in the budget is 3 months should the government announce today that the board was allowed to permit those step movements. Which allowed me to bring back in a whole lot of money that was sitting in kind of in a contingency waiting for that to happen into the surplus projection because we're not going to spend it. So that's why you see the salaries being underspent for principals and vice principals of $162,000. Teachers right now we're projecting coming in with $14,000 surplus now on $32 million. That's really running close, and that can fluctuate so drastically from month to month because our staff does, and just if somebody goes off on a leave and is replaced by a less expensive teacher, it goes down. Somebody goes off on a leave and it's a more expensive teacher, it goes up. But based on our current projections, it's getting very, very close. So that's pretty tight.
Excuse me just a moment, Trustee Schmidt.
Did we not already take $200,000 of surplus money to top that up?
The sick leave. That line.
Okay.
You did.
Okay.
Education assistant salaries. We've done a little bit of recoding, which is why you're seeing some surplus there. It's really coming out of the casual replacement, so it's an offset to the casual replacement budget. We just did a little bit of an accounting treatment there, but we did have some contingency in education assistant salaries that we're also bringing in as we're moving closer to the end of the year and realize that it likely won't be spent. So we've had positions set aside for second semester. And we have used some, but haven't had to use it all. So you see a bit of a surplus there of $232,000 on just under just under $6.9 million. Clerical, $1,700 on $3.5 million. That one's coming in on projection, very, very close. USW, we had some additional funds that we were holding back in reserve here, thinking that our crew would be off capital projects because we had difficulty doing capital with all the Bill 28 work. And that they've been needing to come back onto maintenance, but now that Mill Bay Elementary is reopened, our crew will be very busy with that project, which is of a capital nature. So we were able to kind of bring some of that money that we were holding back for the second semester into the operating budget. So that figure's a little higher than you've seen before. Excluded salaries, roughly $8,500 there, really close, and casual replacements. So you did top that up by $200,000, and if you hadn't, that would be in the hole by about $160,000. So casual replacements are still quite high, but now tracking pretty close to budget. And then in-service extracurricular department head, there's no way it will be spent. You can see that we have a budget of $829,000 and we spent $292,000. We simply do not have the TTOCs to spend all of that. But some of that is restricted of nature, that it belongs to the BC Ed Plan and a lot of the work there. So we're not bringing that into surplus because it will roll over and be required to be spent on that purpose for next year. But there may be some additional surpluses coming through some of those in-service accounts that we haven't brought in yet. I won't go through all the benefits other than really to show you the health benefits. There's some of that savings that's coming out of the MSP premium, $328,000. So overall, it makes sense if your salaries are going to be in a surplus, so are your benefits. So benefits are, take you down here to the utilities line. We just assumed that we're going to fully spend most of our services and transportation department budgets. We've looked through all those accounts. But coming down to utilities, we had a pretty warm winter, and it's resulted in natural gas rates being really quite low. Not rates, but natural gas expenditures being really quite low compared to previous years. To a point where we think we can bring in some surplus projection from that. At this point, it's not going to, nothing can really happen weather-wise that's going to really change that. Now, hydro is pretty close to budget, but that's because most of our schools aren't heated on hydro. So when we run all those through, we show a surplus projection here of $1,447,000. That is in addition to the surplus that resides from the previous year of $1.284 million. So there's $1,284,000 that the board had in the bank prior to this. So the last time we showed you this was based in January, and we showed you just under $1 million surplus, but bringing in some of those contingency accounts that aren't going to be spent on staffing by the end of the year, the principals, the education assistants, it's gone up a bit. That's why it's gone up. So that is something that the board can consider utilizing to balance the next year's budget as we go through the process. Okay.
I just asked them, that is the amount that you've shown under reconciliation of changes, that position, is that the?
It hasn't been brought into that at all. So that $1 million that you see in this sheet here doesn't include $1.4 million of surplus coming in that you could access.
Right.
So you could be in a positive position. Without the addition list of all the things that are going to come at the next BEDC, there's certainly probably close to $1 million on the ask list that has come through the items that we brought to BEDC and to the board previously. When you add them up, they add up to quite a bit. But you could, if it was status quo, you could balance the budget very easily by bringing in that surplus, not touching the prior year's surplus. But if you want to do some new things, that'll be some decisions that the board will need to make in the budget process.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt?
So with having, what, 2.7 million in surplus with the projected and what we still have in the bank, it's 800,000 that we need to keep in the bank to follow our policy? Is that what it is?
Approximately.
So we
But
have just
remember-
under 2 million.
But remember, the more you bring in, the more the next year becomes difficulty if you don't have it again.
Yes.
So we need to think
Good.
longer term.
The only thing I was thinking about was we're going to be with some expenses coming out of Mill Bay Elementary that will eventually cover themselves. So that's why I was just in my head trying to go there because we're getting ready to run budget, right?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Yersanquist.
Right, this doesn't reflect Mill Bay Elementary, which is probably approximately $250,000 to staff and get started again in the operating budget. So those will all come later. So that's what I had, and we can now transfer back to the agenda. Hope it moves smoother than bringing this up in, but maybe if I unplug it. So the next items are actually for action. At the BEBC meeting last week, the committee recommended an indemnification bylaw to the board for adoption, and that came through a recommendation from our policy consultant, who felt that this was a timely bylaw that should be dealt with sooner than the balance of the policies. So it's before the board now for potentially 3 readings tonight.
Thank you. So looking at the first reading, Trustee Schmidt?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the second reading. Moved by Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Yeoman. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the third.
Consideration.
We're 1, 2. Consideration of 3 readings at this meeting. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. And moving to the final reading, third and final reading to bylaw 5. Moved by Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to capital plan.
Thank you. Yes, we've also had a capital plan announcement, and it requires a bylaw. I'm just going to find the announcement. We can bring it up here.
On page 26 of our package.
Yes, page 26. So this is in response to the to the board's 5-year capital plan. So the first item that I think is really important to highlight here is Cowichan Secondary, after decades of being one of the board's #1 priorities. It's been off and on #1 priority. Has finally been recognized as a project that they're willing to pursue. What that means is that you see here that it's a seismic mitigation project at this point. That's the only. If I was to explain to you all the different pots of money that the ministry has for capital projects, seismic is the one that they have the most money in. They have very little for school replacement. So that's why it's been supported through the seismic mitigation project funding. Now, what the board is required to do is to deliver a project definition report, which will look at potentially 3 options: seismic, full seismic repair, partial seismic repair, and school replacement. So it doesn't mean that the idea of replacing that secondary school is eliminated because it starts with a seismic project funding. It just means this is the start of their determination of how that school will be either repaired or replaced. So it's very exciting, and we have the Ministry Capital Division here again tomorrow to help us with working through what the project definition report needs to look like. A very short timeline by October 25th to have that ready. But we like that. We want to be earlier to Treasury Board than others.
We will be ready on time and then some.
Yeah, it's in our interest to have that report done earlier than later, given that Treasury Board typically don't sit through January and February. So very excited about having that item finally on the list. That is really big news for the Cowichan Valley. We also have through the School Enhancement Project budget, capital budget of the ministry, a number of schools that have been supported for roofing projects. So $800,000 there, and those will proceed to design, tender, and construction by March 31st, 2019. So they're basically giving us a year to complete those projects. They typically happen over the summertime. You're not doing roofing projects when kids are usually in session if you can find other ways to do it when you're not. And there's a bus. $168,597. So we've got 1 school bus replacement here. So with that, the ministry requires that the board adopt a capital bylaw, and it doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it like it once did. Now it's just simply an open bylaw, which gives the board the authority to begin expenditures under those capital programs. So before you have the hopefully 3 readings of that bylaw again tonight.
Thank you. So first reading of the bylaw, moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee Croft. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to second reading, moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to considering 3 readings of the capital bylaw, moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. And moving to the third and final reading to capital bylaw. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. And before we carry on with the agenda, we need to celebrate with our press release, because Cowichan replacement has been a needle in my side for these last 4 years. We have been advocating so strongly, and so it is extremely good news for the whole of Cowichan Valley, including the board, that we have now been given the permission to move to the next stage, which is the project development report. And the news release in the middle tells you that it will explore the 3 options: the seismic upgrade only, seismic upgrade and a partial replacement, which is what we saw at George Vanier when we went to Vista in the fall, or a replacement with a new school. And the news release does end with the fact that we have done a strong business case where the new replacement option was the best for the next 40 years. There are a group of community leaders that we have engaged. The mayors of the City of Duncan and Municipality of North Cowichan, our MLA, Sonia Furstenau, our MP, Alistair McGregor, and our BIU president from Nanaimo and locals, as well as we as a body and Chief Seymour from Cowichan Tribes. We have all worked really hard on getting to this point, and we will continue, I hope, to work very hard on item 3, replacement with a new school. So, congratulations, board and community. All right, moving on. Committees and outside organizations, number 9A, minutes of the Board of Education and Business Committee, Trustee Hutchins.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Board of Education of School District number 79 receives the minutes of the February 27th, 2018 Board Education and Business Committee meeting.
Moved by Trustee Hutchins, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to item B, Trustee Schmidt and Thorne.
Trustee Thorne, I was at March 7th meeting.
That the board accept the minutes of the DSAC meeting.
Of March 7th, 2018.
7th.
Moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to upcoming meetings and events on page 33. Just a couple of things I'd like to point out. The partner group liaison meetings, now April 5th from 1 to looks like 5 o'clock will be the last one. So hopefully people can attend some or preferably all of those meetings. The other that I'd point out here is the strategic plan is to be presented tomorrow to the CBRD Electoral Area Services. Tomorrow at 1:30, if anyone else is able to be there, it would be nice to see you. Otherwise, I shall forge ahead. Anything else that people want to comment on? Okay, back to agenda. Item 11, correspondence. There is attached in our agenda, page 34, correspondence from the BC Games President and CEO in partnership. 3 of our employees have been recognized for their outstanding support and achievement on that committee. And those in the letter are Monroe Rowe, Selena Hayes, and Mark Majorson. So we really thank them for the ambassadorship that they are providing from the school district to BC Games. Moving to item 12, new business, Canadian School Boards Association. Mr. Sanchez, have I missed something?
So moved to receive the correspondence?
We need to move it. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor, motion carries. Yeah, moving back to 12A, Canadian School Boards Association, BCSDA has been encouraging people who have attended their conferences or provincial councils to suggest to their boards about attendance at the Canadian School Boards Association meeting in Nova Scotia in the summer. And their interest is to show support for school boards. As we know, the English-speaking school boards in Nova Scotia have been dismissed, and yet the school boards are carrying on with the national conference, and so BCSDA is wanting to have a strong BC contingent. Now, it is a very expensive conference. First of all, the flight across to Halifax, then the registration, accommodation, meals, and so on. So I bring it to you. I don't know what, if anything, we want to do. If you're silent, Trustee Clark.
Sort of what comes to mind is that school board budgets are not a sure thing, and the money ebbs and flows and disappears on a don't want to say whim, but I just did. And so sometimes these opportunities need to be seized in which we could contribute to a very positive national conversation. And I think that as a high-functioning progressive board, we do have a lot to offer. And so I think it's something we should seriously consider, and I would support someone spending the money and going.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt?
I think that we probably have sufficient surplus in the trustee budget to be able to figure this out. What I wouldn't mind is a breakdown of how much it would cost, because maybe we could send two. So it would be nice if we could find out what that cost would be, and then maybe as a board we can figure out. I mean, I think we all know how important school boards are and what's happened back there, and it's something we've always viewed in the province of British Columbia. We've brought it up several times. I know that it was something that we were all toying with when Cowichan didn't have a board, and the district ran so successfully. I know that we were very concerned that this was a model to show that Cowichan didn't need a school board at that time. So I think that maybe just a financial peek at what that could look like, so that I just think it's important.
Thank you. Any further comments? Perhaps we could ask staff.
Please.
To do that. Trustee Cross?
So
Moved by Trustee Cross, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. Any conversation? Trustee Hutchins?
So what is the timeline for this decision?
I think coming to the next board meeting is fine. The conference isn't until July, so that would work. Trustee Drew?
And they haven't sent out any more information.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item B, Cowichan Intercultural Society request for a letter of support around the One World Festival. And it's just a letter, no cost, to support the Intercultural Society and their celebration of the multiculturalism within our community. Trustee Hutchins?
I move that the chairperson sends a letter of support on behalf of the board.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Hutchins, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to question period. Moving to adjournment. Trustee Schmidt and
Whack Trustee Hutchins in the face.
all those in favor? Motion